A billionaire's only daughter was born, but she could never hear. He spent millions on the best doctors in the world, but nothing worked. Then one day, he saw something shocking from his new maid, and what he discovered changed his life forever. The night his daughter was born was supposed to be the happiest moment of his life. Alexander Hayes, one of the most powerful billionaires in the city, stood outside the hospital room with trembling hands. He had built empires, controlled markets, and faced ruthless competitors without fear, but tonight he felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not for himself, but for the tiny life that had just entered the world. A few minutes later, the doctor stepped out. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence, and in that moment, Alexander knew something was wrong. "Mr. Hayes," the doctor said softly, "your daughter is healthy, but she cannot hear." The words hit him like a storm, cannot hear. His world, once filled with power and certainty, suddenly collapsed into silence. Inside the room, his wife, Elena, held their newborn baby girl gently in her arms. Tears streamed down her face, but she tried to smile. "She's perfect," Elena whispered, and she was, tiny fingers, soft breathing, a peaceful face, but she lived in a world of silence. They named her Sophia. From that day forward, Alexander made a promise. He would give her everything. Everything money could buy, the best doctors, the best therapists, the most advanced treatments in the world. If there was even a chance she could hear again, he would find it. Years passed. Sophia grew into a beautiful little girl. She laughed without sound. She smiled without hearing her own voice. And yet she understood love. Alexander filled her world with luxury, a mansion filled with toys, private tutors, specialists from around the world. But no matter how much money he spent, nothing changed. She still couldn't hear. And slowly, something inside Alexander began to break. He stopped smiling as much. He worked longer hours. He avoided quiet moments because silence reminded him of her condition. Meanwhile, Elena became Sophia's entire world. She learned sign language. She spoke to her with her hands. She gave her a voice in a silent world, but life had another cruel plan. One evening, Elena collapsed. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Alexander lost his wife. And Sophia lost the only person who truly understood her silence. The mansion became colder after that, empty, quiet. Alexander tried to step in, but he didn't know how. He didn't understand her world the way Elena did. He tried hiring the best caretakers, nannies, special educators, but none of them lasted long. They couldn't connect with Sophia. She became more withdrawn, more distant, and Alexander became more frustrated until one day everything changed. It started with something simple, a new maid. Her name was Maya. She wasn't highly educated. She didn't come from wealth. She didn't have impressive references. But there was something calm about her, something different. At first, Alexander barely noticed her. To him, she was just another employee. But Sophia noticed, from the very first day. Maya didn't speak to her like others did. She didn't try too hard. She didn't force communication. She simply sat beside her and smiled. For the first time in months, Sophia smiled back. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but it was there. Days passed. Then something strange began happening. Sophia started spending more time with Maya. She followed her around, watched her closely, and one afternoon, Alexander saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Maya was sitting on the floor. Sophia in front of her, and Maya was moving her hands, not randomly, not casually, but deliberately. She was using signs, fluent signs. Sophia's eyes lit up. She responded instantly. Faster than Alexander had ever seen. They were communicating, not just basic signs, but full expressions, emotion, meaning, connection. Alexander's heart began to race. "How?" he whispered. No one had ever been able to reach Sophia like that. No therapist, no expert, no one. He stepped closer, watching carefully, and then he noticed something even more shocking. Maya wasn't just using standard sign language. She was using something deeper, more personal, more intuitive. It was as if she understood Sophia without words, without effort. As if she had been in that world before. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. Something didn't make sense. Who was this girl? Where had she learned this? And why did Sophia trust her so quickly? The next day, he decided to ask. "Maya," he said, his voice calm but firm, "where did you learn sign language?" Maya hesitated. For a brief moment, her eyes changed. Then she looked down. "Life taught me, sir," she said softly. That answer didn't satisfy him, not even close, because what he had seen was not something you simply learn. It was something you lived. Something you felt, and deep inside, Alexander knew. There was something Maya wasn't telling him, something important, something shocking, and he was about to find out. Alexander Hayes had spent his entire life reading people. In business, one wrong judgment could cost millions. He could tell when someone was lying, hiding something, or pretending to be something they weren't. And now, he was certain of one thing: Maya was hiding something. That night, he sat alone in his study, replaying the moment over and over in his mind. The way Sophia's face had lit up, the speed of her responses, the depth of their communication, it wasn't normal. It wasn't something a maid casually learned. It was something deeper. Something personal. The next morning, Alexander did something he rarely did. He investigated, quietly, without telling anyone. Within hours, his team gathered basic information about Maya. What they found only made things stranger. No formal education records, his assistant reported. No certified training in sign language. No previous long-term employment. Alexander frowned. "What about family?" he asked. The assistant hesitated. "Minimal records, sir. It seems like she's been moving from place to place most of her life." That didn't make sense. People don't just appear out of nowhere, but Maya almost had. And yet, she could communicate with Sophia better than anyone ever had. That evening, Alexander watched them again. This time from a distance, hidden, silent. Sophia was sitting on the garden floor playing with a small toy. Maya sat beside her, not saying anything, just present. Then slowly, she began signing again. Sophia's eyes sparkled. She responded instantly. Her hands moved quickly, confidently. For the first time since Alina's death, Sophia didn't look lost. She looked alive. Alexander felt something tighten in his chest, a mix of relief and fear. Because the more he watched, the more one terrifying thought grew in his mind. What if Maya knows something we do? That night, he called Maya into his office. She stood quietly in front of him, calm, respectful, but not nervous. That caught his attention immediately. Most employees felt intimidated in his presence, but Maya didn't. "Sit," he said. She sat. Alexander leaned forward slightly. "I'm going to ask you again," he said, his voice steady. "Where did you learn sign language?" This time, he didn't want a vague answer. Maya stayed silent for a few seconds, then she spoke. "My mother was deaf," she said softly. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "That explains the language," he replied, "but not the connection." Maya looked up. For the first time, there was emotion in her eyes, deep emotion. "You're right," she said. Alexander's heart skipped, because now she was about to tell the truth. "I didn't just learn sign language," she continued. "I lived in silence." The room felt heavier. My mother couldn't hear. "And when I was a child, neither could I." Alexander froze. "What?" he whispered. Maya nodded slowly. "I was deaf until I was 9. Silence filled the room. Alexander couldn't believe what he was hearing. You were deaf," he repeated. "Yes, and now?" "I had a surgery," she said. "A risky one. It worked, but not perfectly. My hearing is still limited." Alexander leaned back in his chair. Everything suddenly started making sense. The way she communicated, the way she understood Sophia. The way she didn't force words but felt them. "You understand her," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "I don't just understand her, I understand her silence." Those words hit harder than anything. For years, Alexander had tried to fix Sophia, to make her hear, to make her fit into the world. But Maya was meeting her where she already was, and that changed everything. But there was still something bothering him. "If that's true," Alexander said slowly, "then why are you here?" Maya didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Because someone once helped me," she said. Alexander frowned. "What do you mean?" Maya took a deep breath. "When I was a child, we were poor. We couldn't afford treatment. My mother worked multiple jobs, but it was never enough." She paused, her voice slightly trembling now. "Until one day, a foundation stepped in." Alexander's chest tightened. "What foundation?" he asked. Maya looked directly into his eyes. "The Hayes Foundation." The room went completely still. Alexander felt like the ground beneath him had disappeared. "That's my foundation," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "They funded my surgery." For a moment, neither of them spoke, because in that moment, everything connected. Years ago, Alexander had funded thousands of medical cases. Donations, surgeries, treatments. He never followed up, never knew the people he helped. To him, it was charity, numbers, reports. But now, one of those lives was standing right in front of him, and had somehow returned to help his daughter. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. This can't be a coincidence, he whispered. Maya shook her head. I don't think it is. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because I didn't come here for you, she replied gently. I came here for her. She looked toward the door, toward Sophia. Alexander followed her gaze, and suddenly, for the first time in years, he saw something clearly. He had been trying to change his daughter's world, but Maya had stepped into it. And now Sophia wasn't alone anymore, but the story wasn't over. Because what Alexander didn't know yet was that the most shocking moment was still coming. That night, Alexander Hayes didn't sleep, not because of business, not because of pressure, but because for the first time in years, something inside him had shifted. He sat alone in the dim light of his study, staring at an old photograph. It was Alina holding baby Sophia, smiling. Peaceful, happy. Back then, everything felt possible. Back then, he believed money could solve anything. But now, he realized how wrong he had been. Because no amount of wealth had been able to give his daughter something as simple as connection. And yet, a girl from nothing had done it in days. Maya, the one person he almost didn't hire. The one person who didn't belong in his world, but somehow belonged in Sophia's. The next morning, something unusual happened. Something that had never happened before. Sophia walked into Alexander's study. Alone, she stood at the door, quietly watching him. Alexander looked up, surprised. She rarely came to him, not like this, not without being called. Slowly he stood. Sophia, he said gently. Of course, she didn't hear him, but she stepped forward anyway. Then she did something that made his heart stop. She raised her hands and began to sign. At first, her movements were slow, careful, as if she was trying to remember something. Alexander froze because he didn't understand, not yet, but then something clicked. Maya. He had seen her do this, the same gestures, the same movements. Sophia was trying to talk to him. For the first time, she was trying. Alexander's chest tightened. He didn't know what she was saying. He couldn't respond, and in that moment, he realized something painful. All these years, he had never truly learned her language. He had hired teachers, experts, specialists. But he himself had stayed distant. And now his daughter was standing in front of him, trying to reach him, and he couldn't reach back. Sophia paused, her eyes searching his face, waiting, hoping. But when she saw confusion, her hands slowly dropped. The light in her eyes faded, and she turned to leave. Wait, Alexander said instinctively. She didn't stop, she couldn't hear him. And that broke something inside him, right there, in that moment. For the first time, Alexander Hayes felt completely powerless, not as a businessman, not as a billionaire, but as a father. Later that day, he found Maya. She tried to talk to me, he said quietly. Maya looked at him. I couldn't understand her. There was no anger in his voice, only regret, deep regret. Maya stepped closer. She's been trying for years, she said softly. Alexander looked up. What? She just didn't know how, Maya continued. And maybe you didn't either. Those words weren't harsh, but they hit harder than anything else, because they were true. For years, he had been present, but not really there. Providing everything except what mattered most. Connection, understanding, love in her language. What did she say? He asked, his voice low. Maya smiled gently. She said, I want to talk to you. Alexander closed his eyes, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. That night, everything changed. Alexander sat in front of a mirror, practicing. His hands awkward, unsteady, learning signs, simple ones, basic ones. Words like, hello, sorry, love. It felt strange, unnatural, but he didn't stop. For hours, he practiced. Because this time, he wasn't doing it for business, or reputation, or control. He was doing it for her. The next day, he tried again. Sophia was in the garden with Maya, laughing silently, playing. Alexander walked toward them, nervous, more nervous than any deal he had ever made. Maya noticed him first. She didn't say anything. She just gave a small nod, encouraging him. Sophia turned. She saw him, and immediately her smile faded slightly. Not fear, not sadness, just distance, the kind that builds over years. Alexander took a deep breath. Then slowly, he raised his hands. His movements weren't perfect. They weren't fast, but they were clear. He signed, I am sorry. Sophia froze. Her eyes widened. She looked at Maya, then back at him. As if she couldn't believe what she was seeing, Alexander continued, I want to learn. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly, very slowly, Sophia stepped forward. She raised her hands, and this time she signed again. But now Alexander understood, not everything, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to feel it, enough to connect. And in that moment, something extraordinary happened. A father and daughter who had lived in the same house for years finally met, truly met. Tears rolled down Alexander's face, something he hadn't allowed in years. But now he didn't stop them because this wasn't weakness. This was love, raw, real, and long overdue. Maya stood quietly to the side, watching, smiling, because she knew this was the moment everything had been leading to, but the story wasn't finished yet, because one final truth remained. One final realization that would change Alexander forever. Days turned into weeks, and something inside the Hayes mansion began to change. For the first time since Alina's death, the house didn't feel empty. It felt alive, not because of wealth, not because of luxury, but because of something far more powerful: connection. Every morning Alexander sat with Sophia. No phone, no meetings, no distractions, just him and her, learning slowly, patiently. He struggled at first. His hands still felt stiff. His signs weren't always correct. Sometimes he forgot. Sometimes he made mistakes, but Sophia never got frustrated. She smiled, corrected him, encouraged him. And every time he improved, even slightly, her face lit up. That alone was enough to keep him going. Meanwhile, Maya continued her quiet presence. She never tried to take credit. Never tried to stand out. She simply helped from the background, guiding Sophia, supporting Alexander, bridging a gap that had existed for years. But one evening, everything shifted again. Alexander was reviewing some old documents in his office when he came across something unexpected. A file, old, dusty, almost forgotten. It was labeled Medical Assistance Program Special Cases. Curious, he opened it. Inside were records of the people his foundation had helped over the years. Thousands of names. Thousands of lives. He flipped through the pages absent-mindedly until suddenly his hand stopped. A name caught his attention. Maya Verma. His heart skipped. He quickly read the details. Age, 9. Condition, severe hearing impairment. Status, emergency case. Treatment, fully funded by Hayes Foundation. Surgery, successful. Guardian, single mother. Alexander felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He kept reading, and then he saw something that made his hands tremble. Follow-up support declined due to lack of response. He frowned. What does that mean? He whispered. The next page explained it. The foundation had tried to contact Maya's family after the surgery, but they never responded. Eventually, the case was closed. Alexander leaned back slowly. Something didn't feel right. That night, he called Maya into his office again. She walked in calmly, as always. But this time, Alexander's expression was different. Serious, heavy. I found your file, he said quietly. Maya didn't react immediately, but her eyes softened. You know, she asked gently. Alexander nodded. But there's something I don't understand. He stood up, walked closer. The report says your family never responded after the surgery. Maya looked down. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke. My mother passed away 2 weeks after the surgery. The words hit like silence, heavy, unmoving. Alexander felt his chest tighten. She worked too hard, Maya continued softly. She was already weak, but she never stopped. Her voice trembled slightly. After I could finally hear, she couldn't. The room felt still, painfully still. Alexander didn't know what to say. For the first time, he realized something he had never thought about before. For him, funding a surgery was the end of a story. But for the person receiving it, it was only the beginning. And sometimes that beginning came with loss, deep loss. Maya looked up at him. But she died happy, she said. She always wanted me to hear the world, even if she couldn't be part of it. Alexander felt something break inside him, not just guilt, but understanding, real understanding. All these years, he had believed he was helping people, and he was, but he had never truly seen their lives beyond the numbers, beyond the reports, beyond the donations, until now. Why did you come here? He asked quietly. Maya smiled faintly. Because someone gave me a chance to hear the world, she paused. So I wanted to help someone feel understood in silence. Alexander closed his eyes, and in that moment, everything became clear. This wasn't coincidence, this wasn't luck. This was something deeper, a circle, a connection, a story that had come back to him in a way he never expected. The next morning, Alexander did something unexpected. He called a meeting. Not with business partners, not with investors, but with his foundation team. They gathered in the conference room, confused. Alexander stood at the front, serious, focused. From today, he began, we're changing everything. The room went silent. No more one-time help, he continued. We don't just fund treatments anymore, he paused. We follow lives. The team exchanged looks, unsure, confused, but listening. We stay connected, Alexander said. We support families, not just cases. His voice grew stronger. Because helping someone isn't just about saving a moment. It's about being part of their journey. That decision changed thousands of lives, but more importantly, it changed him. Weeks later, the mansion was no longer silent. It was filled with something new, laughter. Even if it couldn't always be heard, it could be felt. One evening, Sophia sat beside Alexander in the garden, the sun slowly setting behind them, soft golden light filling the sky. She turned to him, smiling, and signed something. This time, Alexander understood instantly. No hesitation, no confusion, just clarity. She signed, "You understand me now." Tears filled his eyes again, but he smiled. And signed back, "I'm still learning, but I will never stop." Sophia leaned against him, peaceful, happy. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Hayes didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel rich, he didn't feel successful. He felt something far more important. He felt like a father. Maya watched from a distance, quiet, content, because her purpose there was complete. She didn't need recognition. She didn't need reward. Because sometimes, the greatest impact you can make in someone's life is not by changing their world, but by helping them understand it. And as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, one truth remained. Some people speak without words, some people hear without sound, but the strongest connections in the world are felt, not heard. Sometimes the problem isn't that someone can't hear, it's that we never learn how to truly listen. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories.